This is Hospitality Huddles, brought to you by Auden Hospitality, the podcast that challenges hoteliers to think differently about F&B to create outlets that guests will love. Every episode, we will speak to the people who are embracing a different mindset to look for opportunities to stand out from the crowd, sharing tips and takeaways to help you get uncomfortable, change your outlook, and see F&B in a whole new way. So let's not wait any longer and dive straight into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hospitality Huddles. And today I'm really excited to have Vojtech Vegh on with me from Surplus Food Studio. And the reason that we've got Vojtech on today is Planet Conscious is one of the subjects that I've been asked a lot about and talked a lot about just recently. And I put it as one of the unspoken trends of 2024. And Vojtech is the master when it comes to food waste and looking after that food aspect as well. So Vojtech, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks a lot for the intro, Scott. Good to be here.
It's funny. Yesterday, I was at a panel talk, and one of the questions thrown at me was, "Should hotels be more sustainable?" So I wish we'd done this recording before that one, because I'd probably be able to look a lot more intelligent. I have to say, but Vojtech, we always start with the question: "What does hospitality mean to you?" So fire away. Tell us what you would say to this one.
But hospitality to me is exactly what the word suggests. It's to be hospitable, to be caring, and to provide a good service. That's to me what really hospitality is all about: caring and providing service.
Awesome. And Vojtech, for those people who might not have seen you on LinkedIn or know your background, tell us a little bit about your career and how you've set up Food Waste Studio.
Well, I started as most of the chefs at a very early age. The only thing I ever done was working in the kitchens since I was 16, 17-ish. I worked pretty much around the world, to be honest. I changed a lot of jobs when I was younger, especially to get as much experience as possible in different countries as well. And slowly worked my way to better and better restaurants as I was progressing through my career. And I noticed the same thing in every kitchen. There's a lot of food waste at the end of the day or end of the service. And there is so much edible food being thrown away, which kind of caught my attention. Coming from a background where we were pretty self-sufficient in a family that I was growing up in, we had our own garden, doing everything ourselves. So there's kind of a natural appreciation for ingredients. And seeing that that wasn't kind of a case in the industry, it really got my attention that what is it that we can do with all that food? And most importantly, why are we throwing so much away? Until at one point, I ended up working for a head chef in a rather fancy restaurant where he focused he focused a lot of his culinary focus on all the parts of ingredients that are usually thrown away and not being used, not for the sake of reducing food waste, but for the sake of looking for a flavor where we haven't looked before. What is it that we can do with all these parts? The word food waste wasn't ever mentioned in that restaurant or zero waste. It was all driven by the flavor. And when I saw that it's possible at such high level, I really wanted to push it a bit more. And as most of the chefs dream about having their own restaurant, so did I. And at that point, I decided that whatever I will open, if I ever open a restaurant, it had to be zero waste as well. And a couple of years later, I opened my own restaurant, which happened to be the first zero waste and vegan restaurant at that time. It was back in 2018. I opened a small restaurant in Cambodia. I also closed it, luckily, just before pandemic. And then I started consulting and working with chefs, providing them training and telling them basically, or showing them how they can achieve the same thing, how they can prevent the food waste, and what are the possibilities in this industry.
I think that's a really interesting bit that you said there about how your chef used the food, what would normally be food waste, and we're doing speech marks if you're listening to this on audio, and looked at it really for the flavor, because it's really interesting, isn't it, how actually a lot of the stuff that goes in the bin has got amazing flavor or very different flavors to what you see in the hero part of the item.
Yeah, and as long as there is edible food in the bin, there is always flavor in the bin as well. And I think that we as chefs, our focus is on to maximize the flavor of everything that we are working with and to put as much flavor on the plate as possible. And that is it's kind of like working against ourselves when we are sometimes wasting the parts of ingredients that contains the majority of the flavor, because that is the case with so many vegetable peels or fruit
Mm.
peels and other part trimmings that we consider as waste contains so much flavor and nutrition, and then we
Yeah.
put it in a bin. So what would happen if we would like use the entire ingredients and we could maximize all the flavor in the dish that we are working with?
Yeah. It was funny. We were at dinner a couple of weeks ago, and my wife was talking to my kids about how you should be eating the broccoli stalks and all the asparagus and what have you, because she'd heard, I think it was an interview with Tim Spector, who's involved with Zoe, and he was talking about how the most nutrients in a broccoli is actually in the stem, and it was just quite funny how she was just sitting there and the guy they were eating the heads, the flora, and she was like, no, you need to eat the rest of it, you need to eat the rest of it. But it's true, isn't it? It's like it's all sitting there as well. And what I really think was interesting, I read one of your posts, and your post was talking about how there shouldn't be such a thing as zero waste restaurants. And do you know what, after reading it, I couldn't agree with you more. So do you want to just tell people about that post and why we shouldn't have zero waste restaurants?
If the industry standard would be not creating food waste in restaurants, then there is no need to highlight the zero waste part, because that would be the normal, right?
Mm.
And I think that if we are in the business of selling food with a margin, with the intention to profit from the
Yep.
product that we are purchasing and adding margin to that, then it kind of doesn't make sense of wasting what is the main product of our business, to put it that way, in restaurants.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there should not be a need to call restaurants zero waste. And I don't blame anyone who does it or who uses it for marketing, because unfortunately it's not a standard at the moment. So sure, there is a reason to highlight it. But to me, it's such a default or a normal thing that we have kind of normalized being wasteful in the industry.
Mm.
So
Mm.
then we need to highlight when we are doing the right thing. But what if we would just do the right thing as the default option? And then there is no need to highlight that, hey, we are a zero waste restaurant. Because
Yeah.
every restaurant should be a zero waste, I
Mm.
believe.
Yep. No, I'd agree with that. And I looked this up actually before the podcast, and there's 9.5 tons of food waste in the UK every year, and that's a huge amount of food waste. And if there's just some innovative ways to do it, it's definitely going to help with that, isn't it? And like for those people, and this might seem a really silly question, but for those people who might be sitting there and going, like, food waste is stuff that just goes in the bin, and it's like the peels or the trimmings, or it's stuff coming back off guests. Like, what is food waste, and what are the opportunities from saving that going in the bin and doing something with it on a plate?
There are so many, well, not so many, but there are different definitions of what a food waste is. And I think that in the space that I work in terms of hospitality in restaurants and hotel kitchens, the food waste is every edible part of an ingredient that is safe for human consumption. So anything that is spoiled or has been compromised in safety or is not suitable for consuming or unedible, etc., then that is not a food waste anymore. Yeah, we wasted the food, but it becomes an organic waste,
Mm.
because there is no way back from that point. If something goes moldy, there is no way of saving that.
Mm.
Like any plate waste, there is no way of reusing that. So there is nothing that we can do. But what we can do there is to prevent that food waste. And this is why I focus all my work on the prevention rather than the reduction. So when I talk about reducing food waste, it doesn't mean that now I'm gonna look into my bin and start taking things out and using them. But the first step that we need to do is to planning our processes better, so it does not go into the bin in the first place.
Yeah.
Then I don't have to using the things that I might not be comfortable with, because they won't be there.
Mm. And one of the really interesting things I love when I'm scrolling through LinkedIn and I see one of your posts is where you have such a simple product on a plate and you've broken it down into the little bits. And I think the most recent one, I think it was cauliflower. There's been others on there as well. And it really, like, that visual way that you present it really does break it down. And if you had to give kind of a couple of tips or one main tip now to some chefs who might be listening to this in the kitchen and thinking, actually, we're throwing loads of stuff in the bin that we don't need to, what would be your tips of where to start and how to start playing with flavor?
It's we should look at what is the majority waste that we create in a kitchen. What product or what process creates the most of the waste, and then we look
Mhm.
at that because we really tend to look at things like what is the easiest things to do and kind of the feel good actions. Well, sometimes we look at, oh, that's easy to do. I don't know, pickle a handful of bar systems. But yeah, it's a good place to start if you're testing out things, if you want to see how things work or what's possible. But it's unlikely to have an actual impact. So
Yeah.
I always advise to focus on what is the biggest stream of the waste that I have. And if it's a trimming, if it's a byproduct, if it's a peel, then we look at it that how we can upcycle it, how we can use it in a different way. And I really advise to look at it not as I'm trying to reduce food waste or I'm trying to do something with a part of ingredient that I have already labeled as waste, but to look at it in the same way as I look at a more expensive ingredient. How would I use that carrot peel if the price of that carrot peel would be the same as the black truffle? You can play that black truffle game in your kitchen. Like I look at my, I don't know, lettuce trimmings. What if that lettuce would cost like £300 a kilo? How would I use it? What would I do with it? How would I work with that ingredient? And what are the possibilities there? Because like I know and I believe that like we as chefs are creative by default, kind of like
Mm.
the
Mm.
creativity is not lacking. It's the mindset that's lacking because we are looking at parts of ingredients as one part is less valuable than the other. But that's not how nature has designed the ingredients and vegetables
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
There is so many possibilities with everything.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to think about it. We do that a little bit at Auden as well. It's like sometimes it's that mindset of how to think differently from what you've always been trained and start like looking at other areas where you can maybe utilize. It's very similar with this is kind of forget all that training of years of you cut the stems or you cut and it goes in the bin because and start really thinking about what you can do. Now, in some of that things, when I first started reading your posts, I was like, okay, you don't put the broccoli stems in the bin, you make soup. And then from that, I was like, okay, what do you make after soup? And like the naive guy in me, I'm front of house, I'm not a chef, but was like, okay, we can make lots of soup. Like, where do you go from soup into creating something different? And I know you've got tons of examples. The one about the minibar amenities was awesome. We're going to come to that in a minute, but educate the uneducated here of someone who'd been making lots of soup with lots of food waste because there's only so much you can eat in a day, right?
Yeah. I mean, soup is very often it's a thing that is done in so many kitchens. That like, yeah, you can do a veggie soup, but there is only so much veggie soup that you can do and you can use on your menu. So if you look at like a different part of ingredients, the first question should be, can you use the other part of the ingredient in the same way where you use the rest of the ingredients? Can you
Mhm.
put it in the
Yeah.
same way? If I'm making a broccoli bake, for example, or but can I use the stalk in that same part?
Yep.
And that way, you really want to limit the amount of processes that are required to actually really reduce or upcycle any food waste. So then you look at it that way that like, how can I limit even the amount of movements that I need to make in the kitchen and just to
Yeah.
simplify my process and put it in the same place where I use the rest of the ingredients. If
Mhm.
that's not possible and if it's required because of the process to separate that ingredient into two or multiple parts, then I need to look at it like what is the most valuable way to upcycle this ingredient that will make sense to use on my menu. Because what sometimes happens is that we really go into this upcycling that like we're gonna create so many different things. We're gonna pickle, ferment, dehydrate, process, preserve, freeze, and then 2 months later, when the inventory is being done, like all goes into the bin because I don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
the first step is always to really know that how is this fit into my current F&B offering, whether it's one menu, whether it's in a hotel, whether even in staff food, how can I use that ingredient in a reasonable way where it makes sense? And it should ideally replace another ingredient that you already have on the menu. So if I'm, for example, if I have a sandwich that has gherkins in it or like a pickled carrots or something, does it really have to be pickled carrot or gherkins? Can that be pickled broccoli stalks? Can that be pickled cauliflower stems? Can I replicate the similar flavor profile with a byproduct that is not being used in another process? How can I replace this ingredient? So with that being said, your mise en place should stay roughly the same, whether you are working on a zero waste menu or whether you are not doing a zero waste
Yeah.
menu.
Yeah. I think that's a really strong message to come from that is this isn't about adding SKUs and creating more work. It's actually you're just replacing buying in other areas, and that therefore helps cash flow, helps food cost, all those bits that everyone's crying out for right now. It really helps, doesn't it? Because, for example, like we're putting a white paper together at the minute, and one of the stats we're seeing is food cost has slightly come down year on year, but clearly we're still miles away from 2019, and this is using stats from the UK as a whole. So every little margin of possibility and opportunity is so key, and I think that's a really great takeaway. What you're saying is, how can you replace something that might be the obvious with something similar? Not only does that then save the food cost, etc., but it shows the innovation of the business and can really start putting you apart from competitors, especially in a hotel landscape, which is like you were saying, gherkins and piccalillis and like it same, right?
You know, you should be actively trying to reduce your SKUs in house. That is one. You already have so many ingredients. What if you could reduce that by 30, 40% or even half? You could use you look at what's in a bin and how many parts of ingredients are in the bin. How can you turn them into a product that will reasonably replace the current product that you are using on your menu? If I'm making whatever, I don't know, or maybe I'm buying mango chutney for my curry. Can I use all the watermelon rinds from the summer season to turn the watermelon rinds into chutney, have it preserved in the kitchen? Now I created a pretty much a zero cost ingredient apart from the sugar, vinegar, and salt in the chutney because the watermelon rinds has already been paid for when I have bought my watermelons per kilo. So I can turn it into a new product. I can stop buying my mango chutney because I can replace it with an in-house chutney. How is that going to reduce my cost? And how is that going to also raise the customer experience?
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting, and you know, it's something I'd not even thought about as well in terms of how that development of that product can replace the normal item that can then improve guest experience for people. I think it's super interesting. Now, looking at hotels, huge opportunity for hotels listening to this. You know, conference and banqueting, mini bars, amenities, like you name it, that hotel has got it. Even things in terms of like back onto the white paper, some of the bits we're seeing is health and wellness is becoming much more important, particularly in room service orders. RFP documents now from conference and events are asking what green credentials you're doing within your hotel. This is opportunity to tick all those boxes and more, isn't it?
Hotels are in a best position to reduce food waste. No other F&B business has it easier than a hotel to reduce food waste. Yet, hotels create the majority of the food waste in the F&B business because of the amount of different places where F&B is being served. But that, for the very same reason, it's the easiest for them to reduce because you have so many more upcycling opportunities than a standalone restaurant on a high street with one kitchen and one dining room, and oftentimes only one menu. Your opportunities are quite limited in there. That what you're gonna do with those byproducts, you really have to push it back into the same menu or turn it into something else. But with hotels, if you have like 7 different F&B outlets, plus minibar, amenities, conferences, banquets, reception snacks, whatever welcome snacks, and everything that you have, there is so many opportunities to reduce food waste, also to generate food waste. But we should really turn it into a positive thing about that it can generate food waste, but you also have the opportunity to reduce food waste in the same way. Because using a product, you are not forced to use one byproduct or any given product on the same menu or on the same at the same place. You can use it in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Can you tell us some of those things that you've created for hotels? Because I know you've posted quite a bit just recently about it. And let's start with the in-room amenities. I think it was the in-room amenities that you did, or was it the minibar? Let's start with those because I think you don't have to give away all your trade secrets, but there's some really good bits in here, and I'd love people to hear it.
What I always like to say is that like the indoor amenities that you have currently at many, especially in the luxury hotels,
Yeah.
how many guests are actually touching those fresh sliced fruits when you check it at 9 p.m. Or the how long has been the my charcuterie and cheese lying in my room? Did the housekeeping put it there at 10 a.m. and been there for
Yeah, yeah.
all of these things. What an opportunity for me to reduce my food waste and to stream or to divert the food waste that is created in other places. And maybe let's not even call it a food waste, but a byproduct that is generated in the kitchen, and to turn it into a shelf-stable amenities and snacks that can be in the room for guests when they check in. That way, when I check into my room, I don't need to question that how long has this biscuit been lying around, because it's a biscuit or a
Yeah.
cracker or something. Whether it's been there for 10 hours or a day, nothing's going to change on that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one thing. And the other thing is that if you have byproducts in the kitchen that are might be challenging to put it back in the same menu in a valuable way that makes sense. I might have an inconsistent amount of product or something that I really don't know what else to do with it. Why not turn it into snacks or small amenities for
Mm.
the room amenities basically when the guests check in? There
Yeah.
is so many things that can be done, and it's just another opportunity for you to divert your food waste from the
Yeah.
kitchen and turn it into something that can be served for free for the guests and elevate the experience at the same time.
Yeah. The example I think you shared on LinkedIn was it rye bread that you dried dipped in chocolate with orange zest and
Yeah, it it
packaged up?
wasn't done by me. It wasn't done by me. It was in a
Okay.
hotel that I was checking in. It was a rye bread dipped in a dark chocolate
Mm.
and sprinkled with orange zest, which to my information, it was like a orange zest that comes from juicing oranges for the breakfast. So the zest was used on that. And it
Yeah.
was all the bread that wasn't sold or wasn't used in the buffet that was dried, and then just some dark chocolate in there. So you reduce the cost of your amenities by what, 70% because you use products that would otherwise go into the bin.
Yeah. And I think what's really great about that is I think every hotel I work with cries about the allocation that they get from the rooms guys for breakfast, for amenities and complimentary items. And this is a great way to make sure that those conversations never happen because you're just upcycling that product. And when you've got pastry teams there who are producing chocolates or making the amenities anyway. Again, back to your point that you just said earlier, you're not asking people to do any more work. It's just replacing
Yeah.
that work with something else that has much more value for everyone.
You should always be looking at it in a upcycling as replacing the current processes or products that I'm doing.
Yeah,
Never putting more things on top of what I'm already doing, but replacing what I'm already doing with things that cost me less
yeah,
in a product. And especially using products that I already have in house, but I'm not using. So let's be resourceful and we can look at everything that normally goes to the bin and how can that be turned back into a valuable thing.
yeah. I think we opened a bakery brand in 2021, and we had you won't like it because we called it, I think we called it no waste or low waste or some, it was something of that ilk. But we took the leftover wholemeal and the leftover white sourdough, the baker pulped it down, made it into a pulp that was mixed with the mix for the sourdough, and I think it replaced 60% of the mix, if I remember right. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong. And it made this, it was beautiful, was this bread. Like it was stunning when it came out. We took the leftover croissants, we made bread and butter pudding with it, and and that type of thing. We even did like a no waste latte, which was, we got the cinnamon bun, which was vegan. We soaked it in oat milk over 48 hours, so it took on the taste, and then we made a nice latte with it. So it got this beautiful flavor from the cinnamon bun. It had all the kind of the flavors that came through from it, but again, it was kind of reusing some of those products because in a bakery environment we had lots
Mhm.
available at the end of the day. And I think there's all those things coming back off breakfast. How can you, instead of them just going down to the staff canteen, how can you do some really innovative stuff with it? And then if we focus on like peels and elements for salads, because this is where I think there's a real opportunity here for conference and banqueting to really start utilizing some of this. How can people utilize some of those off bits of the salads to just make something really fun, innovative, different? It has a story, it ticks those green credentials that are so important for events nowadays. Like, what's some of the things that you've done in the past?
Yeah, the good thing about like the conferences and events that they are always pretty tailored to every need. So there are so many hotels that do the dishes or the menus are kind of one-off, that they are not being repeated. And even if they are being repeated, it's something that you are offering to a group of guests that are not regularly coming to a hotel. So you can, even if you're repeating the same things, or if you have like an irregular amount of food waste, then it's easier for you to incorporate. Because if you are cooking for, I don't know, 200 people at the conference, then you have the amount for 200 people, and that's what you're gonna put on that, into that bowl or into that salad. And the good thing like about like particularly like salads or vegetables, that like any product that is like too challenging to use in other different ways, there is like this magic tool in the kitchen where you can just grate everything down. If I have lettuce leaves, broccoli stalk, whatever you name. That is the shape doesn't look like I want to present it on a plate. It's an irregular amount that I don't know what else to do with it. It's really hard to work with. Let's just like grate everything down, grate it into a mixture. Whether you are grating an actual carrot and celery and all vegetables, or whether you grate the other parts of the ingredients, will not make much of a difference. And then when you have like a grated mixture of raw vegetables. There's so many avenues that you can take from there. It can become a simple cracker. It can become a puree or even the usual soup. It can become a burger. It can become the veggie balls. It can become so many different things. So this is an opportunity that, because particularly with these events conferences, you have like the amount of ingredients that you are going to use, the raw ingredients in there. They might not fit into a recipe, or you might not be able to use it somewhere else in your menu because it's an irregular amount or you don't have that usually in house. So just circulate back everything into the same offering, into the same menu. The best way to do is that to not even mention that it's zero waste, that I have done something differently, because kind of labeling things in that way oftentimes put people off that are not familiar with the matter, and they be like, oh, waste? No. Why am I eating waste when I have paid that much for it? So waste isn't even an appropriate word to use for a food that is perfectly fine and edible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I think that's there's another really good tip there, isn't it, in terms of that guest perception of low waste and all the rest, and it's just creating dishes with products, and people don't really need to know because the flavor's there, and it does everything that it needs to do. I think that's a really good tip. I guess it's that whole mindset, back to what you were saying before about the chefs using a mindset of how do you start using these products. It's the mindset of looking at it exactly like what you've mentioned, which is it actually isn't food waste. It's just another part of the ingredient that's there to be utilized. That's probably one of the key takeaways I've taken from today's chat.
There is I talk to so many people, or we talk about this oftentimes with the people I work with, that should we highlight that we are zero waste, or should we not? And there are a few markets where it works, like England, or like maybe these more Western countries, where people are aware and are actively looking out for sustainability options. But apart from that, I saw it more often backfire rather than work.
Yep.
Because from people's perception, or from the guest perception, it's labeled as something different than what it normally is. And that to them is like, hey, I'm not different. I'm just this normal guy who wants normal food. And even though that is perfectly normal food for normal people, but the perception really plays a massive role in there. So from my experience, I prefer to not really highlight unless the preference of someone.
Yep.
But there is absolutely no need to highlight like, hey, we use everything in there, because then people really start questioning like, oh, what you done in the kitchen, like what have I eaten here?
Yeah, for sure. And like in terms of flavors and how you like personally got into using the different parts and how you might get a product. And maybe you've gone past this now because you've done it so much, but if you get a new item and you think, you know, actually, could I play with that? Is that something I can work with? What's some of the creative process that you go through when you get that ingredient and go, okay, what can I do with it?
So I had the opportunity a couple months ago to cook in Southeast Asia with a few tropical exotic ingredients I have never cooked before with.
Yeah.
So on my when I see these ingredients, my first question is always, is it edible and is any part of it poisonous? Because if yes, then you're not using that. But as long as the whole product is edible and nutritious, then like I think that over time I have kind of developed my sort of a system or the pattern
Yeah.
that I work with ingredients. So if I see any new ingredients that I haven't worked before, I have the same questions around it. Like, can the skin be infused into a liquid? Can I extract the flavor in some way? If I cannot eat the skin directly, like pineapple and other tropical ingredients that are very fibrous, you're not gonna chew the skin itself, but there is still flavor in that you can extract. Can I extract the flavor in that from that? Can I can I make the skin crispy and actually turn it into a product that will add value to the dish? Can I use it in that way? Can the seed of a product be eaten? Are the leaves nutritious and safe for human consumption? And then like no matter what kind of, if we're speaking particularly about leaves, for example, what any kind of green leaves, like you can use the product, oftentimes the product in the same way like you would use the leaves that you are currently using. So when people ask me like, what can I do with radish leaves? Just, like what you do with spinach, do the same thing. They are not that different from it, and they can be used in different ways. And that goes into many different ingredients. So like, what can I do with the pumpkin skin, for example? I can chop it up in small things and fry it or pan fry it or roast it in the oven. And then I can apply that same thing into so many different ingredients that have a similar skin or similar texture. So it's to me it's less about creating like super innovative, completely brand new things, but rather than applying what's sensible and what highlights the quality of the ingredients in the best way.
So I guess my take on that would be you take a product, let's say radish, and you look at what so you say radish leaves, and you take something that's similar from a product perspective, and you go, okay, with that we can saute it, we can boil it, we can soup with it, and then you just almost test the same logic with the original product, so the radish leaves, and see which one extracts the most flavor or where it works, where it doesn't. Maybe it might be too bitter sauteing, but it might be good pureeing. And is that the process that you follow?
Yeah. It's almost looking like where it fits in the best way. Like radish leaves, like, okay, if I have a pesto on my menu, and can I replace half of the amount of basil with radish leaves in it? Can I turn it into radish leaf pesto? Will that be a perfectly fine, good tasting pesto? Can I make a salsa verde from it? If I have a green herb oil that I drizzle on the dishes with fine touch, can I use, instead of the expensive herbs, can I use radish leaves in that oil? Because I'm already buying them, because I already have them in my fridge. So can I stop buying parsley? Can I use radish stop? Will it impact the quality of the dish in any way? If not, if that flavor is not dominant in that dish, the parsley is not necessarily has to be there, but I'm looking for the quality of the green, the herbaceous taste of the oil, then why can I not put radish leaves in that? If it doesn't impact the quality of my dish in a negative way. And same with different ingredients, cauliflower leaves. Such a common question all the time. What can I do with cauliflower leaves? Just think about it like a cabbage. Like what you do with a Chinese cabbage. I can pickle it, I can roast it, pan fry it, do this and that. I can do coleslaw from it. It's just like a cabbage. I can put it in a kimchi, for example. The qualities and the flavor profile is so similar to that. So I'm looking at that like in what way I'm using a similar ingredient already, and can I replace that ingredient with a byproduct that I'm working with right now?
Mhm. It's really interesting because one thing that you've taught me during this is actually it's really simple. Doing what, like upcycling, it's really simple. But even me, who's worked in the industry 25 years, I've worked with amazing chefs and amazing creators. we're just in this almost like tunnel vision of how things are done. And actually just thinking about everything so simple as you said, really can just create something so unique. I could listen to you talk about this all day, and I'd love to try some of the stuff that you're talking about, because it is just so simple, and it just needs someone to just kind of sit there and question, almost like a child, like, why is that going in the bin? What could I potentially do with it? And it's going to open a whole new world of opportunity, right?
But my best advice all the time is question everything and all the time. And I really look at well, because I've run my own business and I had my own restaurants, to me, the steps I'm going to take with an ingredient is that what is the simplest possible way to make it the most delicious, but at the same time, the most profitable option for me.
Yeah.
So, sure, I can go and ferment something and turn it into a garum, a miso, and etc. If I have a space, the manpower to actually do that and have a 6 month process to extract the flavor from an ingredient, then that's great, but that is rarely applicable on large scale in a large F&B businesses. You want to look at like what I can do with that using what I already have without having to make like significant changes in the kitchen. To me, it's all about simplicity and profitability. The financial savings are oftentimes the biggest drivers of looking to reduce food waste.
Yeah, and I get one of my next questions was going to be that, actually, in terms of clients who you've worked with, what type of reduction have these guys seen on food cost by implementing an upcycling culture?
I never, well, I want to say that I've never measured directly because I don't have the means of
Yeah.
measurement the food waste. So I always use like a party data that they're already using in the kitchen. The biggest one I have ever heard as a feedback was 80% reduction in food waste in a matter of 3 months. But it's a rather a rare scenario. It's most often around 40 to 50% that you can reduce your food waste in a matter
Yeah.
of months, when you update the menu.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess people can do their own maths on that, right? Is look at those P&Ls at the end of the month, or look at your inventory systems, see what that wastage is, and knock 40% off. Put it back onto your results, and see what the percentage is. Because I mean, the maths is as simple as that, I guess, isn't it? It really shows opportunity
There is no way that you will not make more profit if you reduce your food waste
for sure.
because it's simply not possible. If I start using half of the wasted ingredients and putting it back on the menu and selling it with margin, there is just no way that it's not going to reflect in the profit.
No, that's the benefit of it, isn't it? It's but you know, I also think, like, you come in and working with someone, they get 40% of the wastage back on the bottom line. That's pure profit straight away. Like, that's brilliant. That's commercial. Like, it's great. One of the bits that's excited me from this conversation is the guest experience and the opportunity of just creating something amazing, like a chutney with made from watermelon peel. Like, if I got that in a restaurant today, I'd be looking at that, and I would walk away with that in my mind, because it's just something I'd never seen before. Yet it's something that every hotel right now today is probably thrown away after breakfast from people who've from when they've been prepping cut watermelon and stuff. So that's the bit that excites me out of this conversation, is there's just that experience and innovation is
There is
amazing.
yeah, so much opportunities, and it's not all only about like reducing the food waste, like saving cost and making more profit from what we are selling, but also elevating the guest experience
Mm,
and kind of interrupting our thinking pattern in the kitchen, and like us being forced to be more creative in the kitchen, which is kind of like it should be an exciting thing for the chefs, to have
yeah,
a
for sure.
pattern interrupt and to be able to like look at products. It's kind of like when you travel across the world to a different country and you see all of those new products. Well, what if we could recreate the same experience just by looking at what's in a bin and using those products next time when I have them on my chopping board?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
taking them out of the bin, but using them next time when I
Yeah,
birthday them. You know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. We're not advocating anyone to take stuff out of the
Yeah.
bin and upcycle. But I guess the other thing on that as well is it's not just restaurants, it's not just chefs who can maximize this stuff. Is bar guys and bartenders, mixologists can really start working with chefs or even looking at what they're cutting off ingredients, syrups, infusions, like fruits, flavors that they can start extracting out of things to make difference in cocktails as well.
This is a perfect opportunity for hotels, and this is why I said the hotels are in the best position to reduce food waste because you might have a bar or two or three in your property. So if I really have a ton of fruit waste in my kitchen and I just don't know what to do with it, it doesn't fit into my menu, then let's talk to the bar manager like, hey,
Mm.
like you can make homemade infusions like alcohol infusions, you can make syrups, you can dehydrate them, use them for garnish, use them for powder, use them for tea, use them for whatever in a liquid way because actually um, turning the byproducts into a liquid form is one of the easiest ways to preserve the flavors and to keep them preserved in the kitchen and to be kind of extend the shelf life of the product.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think I think there's again like that upcycling, that using it around the hotel, using it in different places. And sometimes I think we were talking about this at this panel that I was talking about yesterday, is we were talking about like RFP processes and corporate companies now asking for green credentials. If you go back on a proposal and you're talking about how you're upcycling, you're talking about how that then goes into the bar, you might book a conference with us and we use it down in, it's much more authentic and genuine than some of these businesses who just tick a box and we don't
Mhm,
use single-use
mhm,
plastics. And like it's
mhm.
really showing that there's authenticity, isn't it? Wojciech, I guess people listening to this, if they haven't been inspired, then they should probably switch off now and go home because I'm thinking about what we've got in the garden now and what we could be able to do with like the carrot leaves and we've got radishes growing with radish leaves, or they're probably all gone now. But um, how do you work with people who might be listening to this and go, do you know what? We can do something, but we don't know where to start. Let's just give Vojtech a ring. What are the different ways that you can work with people, work with chefs? I know you've got your online course as well. Tell everybody how they can work with you.
So all I do is food-based training for chefs, and that is done in different ways. I have the self-paced online course for the chefs, which is currently being updated, and the new version will be available in a matter of weeks. And then I do the same training in person. I do master classes and hands-on workshops for chefs, and I also do all the trainings online in a cohort style, which is mostly done only for private companies. So I'm training chefs in different ways, whether that's in person, whether that's online, and of course, then there is the consulting part with a long-term work with someone who is really want to redefine the processes in the kitchen and creating like operating procedures and things.
Yeah, for sure. And tell me the in-person bit, the consulting bit, I get it. You go there, you're with the chefs, you're training them, you're spotting things that might be in the bin. And I get if someone wants like, I guess probably in the cohorts or online, it's probably a more efficient way
Mm.
of engaging with you. What are some of the things that you cover so that they understand what products it is to use? What goes on in the online course, for example?
So the course is focused on the systematization of the process and the systematic
Okay.
changes that needs to happen and the mindset focus. So it's not a cooking course. I don't talk about what you can do with the cauliflower leaves because it's less important what you can do with cauliflower leaves, but it's more important that how you can put it into your standard processes and how you can turn
Right.
it into normal use. It's all about the mindset and systematic change in the kitchen.
Yeah, which as you were saying, once you get that mindset change, you'll start looking at things differently, and
Mm.
it'll natural intrigue will flow anyway. Um, is there a book,
There
or
is a
if there
book.
isn't, there's a book as well? Yeah,
There is a book. Yeah, it's called
fantastic.
Food Waste Guide for Chefs.
Yeah, where
And
can we
yeah,
get
yeah,
that?
Amazon.
Awesome.
Only Amazon, but ships worldwide. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get that link from Vojtech after this. I'm going to put it in the show notes because I'm definitely going to be getting a copy. I didn't realize that, so I'm definitely going to be getting a copy because today is honestly it's been really really insightful. And I think when I first wanted to talk to you, I'd been watching your posts for a while, and it was always like I thought we were going to talk a lot about like what we gain out of food waste and profit and food costs, but actually the bit that's been most exciting is the new flavors and the new opportunities, and that bit that you were saying about changing obvious things for non-obvious things that might enhance the guest experience is the bit for me that really is the exciting bit of this conversation than the food waste, because that's just almost a byproduct of doing something really cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, as chefs, we are in the culinary world. Our focus is on cooking delicious food, so let's make it even more delicious.
100%. Is it Vojtech? How can people get hold of you if they want to reach out? Websites, obviously, I know you're on LinkedIn. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. But how else can they find out more about you?
Surplusfoodstudio.com is my website that contains all the information, or the LinkedIn.
Perfect. I've got a few questions that I just want to ask you, a bit of quick fire questions now. What is your favorite hotel restaurant?
Oh, that's a tough
This
one.
This is the first time in 40 minutes I've caught you off guard.
Favorite hotel restaurant. I actually can't think of one.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Got with that one. My favorite restaurant, well, I will say Silo in London.
Yeah, great restaurant. Really cool restaurant. And what food or ingredient would you put in room 101?
Cauliflower.
Cauliflower? Really? Wow. I wasn't expecting that as an answer. Why would you put cauliflower in? You did an amazing post on cauliflower. No flavor?
No, sorry. Did I misunderstand the question?
Yes, I think you did. Right. Room 101 is where you'd send something and you'll never see it again. Like, it's like the thing that you're like, no way, I'm not going to do that. I was like, cauliflower. No. What's the food or ingredient that if you could banish it from the world, you could get rid of it, you would do so?
Capers.
Capers. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that.
No,
yeah. There's much better stuff to use, right? And then last one, what was your favorite childhood dinner?
There is a stew from Savoy cabbage that my mother used to cook at home.
Amazing. Yeah, that's the one that always remembers, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, Vojtech, honestly, really, I was excited to have you on and chat to you more, and I'm more excited after chatting to you. And honestly, keep up the great work, keep posting the brilliant stuff on LinkedIn, and thank you again for coming on and sharing some amazing insights with everyone listening.
Thanks a lot. It was really good to talk. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Hospitality Huddles, brought to you by Auden Hospitality. If you want to see how we can help you think differently for your next F&B project, then learn more by visiting our website at audenhospitality.com. If you want to revisit clips from this or previous episodes, make sure you visit our YouTube channel at Auden Hospitality. Thank you for listening to the show, and see you next time.